Good evening. Thank you for watching. I'm Leah Hogg with our current affairs program in English. We're live from Net TV studios. Today, we're going to speak about Professor Edward Scicluna, who recently resigned from his post as Minister of Finance to take up a new role as the Governor of the Central Bank. A new role he's taking up from the 1st of January. Before we start, I'd like to go back a few months and refer to the testimony of Minister Scicluna during the public inquiry of the assassination of Daphne Caruana Galizia. And I quote, just right here behind me, he says, "I'd like to go back. If I had not voted to retain Conrad Mizzi, I would have had to resign. This did not seem fair, and I would have had to leave a comfortable job." During this program, we're going to be joined by the Honourable Dr. Adrian Delia, who's going to share his comments and the comments of the opposition with regards to this new post that Professor Scicluna is taking up. Good evening, Dr. Delia. Thank you for joining.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Leah. Thank you for all those who are following us.
I'd like to hear your comments, which are the comments for the opposition, with regards to the new role that Professor Scicluna is taking up as the Governor of the Central Bank of Malta.
Yes, first of all, I would like to refer to a press conference that we, as a party, gave just a few days ago, myself and my colleagues Karen Aquilina and Mario De Marco. Therein I had stated the position of the party, and in a nutshell, we can split up our arguments as follows. First of all, what is the position of Governor of the Central Bank? It is the person in Malta who is entrusted, literally, with the regulation of our banking system, is the authority and the entity which ensures that there is structure in our banking system during a period and context where we are still undergoing the Moneyval tests, where we have the Bank of Valletta who has recently shown, and we had been saying this for quite a number of months, the difficulties relative to maintaining the correspondent banking agreements that it has with other banks across the world, which means that anybody who wants to do business in the dollar account will not be able to do that, at least with where Bank of Valletta is concerned. However, we all know that the position of the Central Bank is also the position which relates the interest rate lies with the European Central Bank, fundamentally a position where we are entrusting our banking structures to the government. Why did we conclude that Edward Scicluna is not fit, not proper to be able to position? Let me go back just a few days, where Edward Scicluna gave testimony in Vital's case, where we all know we are talking about a 2,000 million plus case to regain the hospitals, the multi. And I quote, so that there is misinterpretation on many sides. When I specifically questioned him about how this deal was given, he said that he was not involved. When I specifically asked him whether he knew about the memorandum of understanding before the tender was issued, which means, according to the words of the Auditor General, that there was collusion with governments and the foreign companies who stole our hospitals, he said he had no idea. When then I said whether he knew about the 100 million addendum to that contract, 100 million out of our monies, he said that this was something he did not know about. And when I asked him what he did when he got to know about that, because he had just given testimony that there are things which make you suspect and things which actually are red flags, and I said, so even after you got to know about this 100 million addendum, did that get you in a position to raise your eyebrows at all? Because that's the specific clause he used, and he said no. When he asked whether he had a meeting, whether he spoke to the Prime Minister, whether he challenged the fact that out of the funds of our country, and he was the Minister of Finance, entrusted to take care of our funds, he didn't raise a finger.
Absolutely.
When asked about the contract of the Vitals and how it took place, he said that there were no red flags.
What in your
just let me conclude on this. So we had the Minister of Finance who knew that there was a pre-agreement on the Vitals deal, thought nothing of it, did not know anything about it, saw nothing wrong in it. Then when he got to know about the 100 million contract, saw nothing wrong about that, did nothing about that, and everything was left to pass. A person who has that responsibility and does nothing is certainly not a person who then should be entrusted with the position of governor of the central bank.
Absolutely. If I may ask you, what impact does his appointment have on the reputational risk of our country, in your opinion?
That's a very, very pertinent question. First of all, it always does. Any governor of a central bank in Europe and across the world has an impact because it is one of the key positions, not only in government, but in the institutions where any country, even or sovereign entity, which is doing business with Malta or looking at Malta, looks at the central bank, how it's regulated and who is governing it. When we are in a stage where we have failed the first part of the Moneyval test, where we are now in the most crucial moment, where his name is associated to the Muscat government, which was the most corrupt government ever in Europe, then his name alone is testimony to a government that does not want to do anything to fight corruption. It's testimony to a government who does not want to show the Maltese electorate and the world that they are serious about doing business which totally removes corruption from the equation. And therefore, simply by association, but also because he was the Minister of Finance who allowed the deals of, I think, historically, the most negative impact in Maltese history. Electrogas, hundreds of millions, Vitals, hundreds of millions, thousands of millions. I'm just mentioning a couple. And when we then see that when all this came to the public, he actually still did not even lift a finger, then that is, I think, very damning. It's also interesting to point out there that a few days back we had also the testimony of Scicluna, who basically contradicted Prof. Scicluna. It is not my place to say who is lying, but one of them is lying. One of them is a liar. One of them is not saying the truth. So you have Scicluna saying that it is impossible that the Vitals deal was unknown to Scicluna because it had to go through Parliament. It is diametrically opposed. And when you have these instances of two of the most powerful people in government at the time, the Chief of Staff of the Office of the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance, and we know as a certain fact that one of them is lying, then one of them is now ousted. He still has to face proceedings, and we know that in court he was lying, and I am testimony to that, and I will challenge him on any front that he was lying under oath, and I would to see our police force now taking action against him for lying under oath. But we also have, in a more tortuous position, Prof. Scicluna, who is not going to occupy the position of governor when we have all that baggage for the last 7 years accompanying the journey.
Yes, you mentioned the baggage, Vitas and Stewards, the electrogas projects, which also included the Mozura wind farm project in Montenegro. Those are still sort of unresolved. We also have, if I can refer to the surplus of the previous government of Joseph Muscat. How does all this impact this appointment and the Moneyval report?
Yes, it does, and I've already given some when I answered the first few questions. But let me just latch on to what you just said now regarding the surplus, because we have not spoken about that. How do you achieve the surplus? Which are the economic activities which were created, maintained, and pushed forward in order to create this alleged surplus? Most poignantly, the scheme of the selling of passports. So the only inventive, if you want to put it so, scheme that was basically under the Scicluna ministerial regime, if you want, was the sale of passports, which created millions out of thin air, yes, but then caused such a ripple effect of negative reputational sort of impediments that are harming the rest of the economic cycle in a manner which will continue for years. So it was an easy grab situation. Let's just sell our silverware now for a price which is competing on the market and not think at all on the consequence of that action, which will then be inherited for years.
Thank you.
That, I think, is one of the most immature and irresponsible decisions that any modern government has ever taken.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Delia. I'd like to bring up something which is completely different, and I really would like your comment about it, because it was something that interested you. I'd like to address the new law about parents and the sex of a newborn baby and the gender. Can we, in simplistic terms, have a brief explanation about that?
Basically, in the last week, and I say this with a saddened heart, because there is politics which always affects people, or affects the economy, or affects the political issues involved. But here we are talking with the soul of a country, of a nation, because our government passed legislation which basically says that upon the birth of a child, even when there is an obligation to declare the sex of the child at birth. So mother, father, date, place of birth, and there is, under Article C of the relative clause at law, an obligation on the parents to say whether the child is a boy or a girl. Unless, and that is a proviso, there would be no manner at that point in time to establish the gender of the child. By doing so, basically, we have given a free hand to any parent from henceforth to leave blank and therefore not declare anything, even when we have instances which are not the exception. The law should have provided for instances where at birth, biologically, one could not determine the sex of the child. And that's fair, and the government there would have had an obligation to cater and give comfort and protect the interests of a possible vulnerable child. But to specifically distort nature, but to specifically say, even when nature is clear, and we have a boy and a girl which have been born, you still, in a weird attempt to warp pseudo-liberal or neoliberal sort of political regime, say there is a choice to say the sex of the child is unknown.
That's,
the consequences of that on children for years is massive. And I think it is a shame that our government could have taken up the proposal of the opposition and only made this option viable where there is an uncertainty at law dictated by nature and by biological determination, and not simply by capricious choice of individuals, parents, yes, individuals on children who also have rights.
Would you regard this law, just finally before we close, as a bit avant-garde, can I say?
Absolutely not. I would regard this law as being one of the series of laws which are creating a soulless state. A pity when this comes just a few days before the Nativity of the Christ.
Thank you very much, Dr. Delia, as always. Just very quickly, vaccine. Will you be taking your vaccine?
I would be one to actually take anything which medically is being prescribed as being not only safeguarding the personal health of myself and my family, but also in an effort to ensure that public health is being catered for in the most responsible manner, always respecting the advice of the medical authorities.
Thank you very much, Dr. Delia. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
My pleasure, Leah.
Thank
Happy
you.
Christmas to you and all your followers. Happy New Year.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That was the Honourable Dr. Adrian Delia. We're having a very short commercial break. I'll be with you very soon.